All right, our next topic, we're going to jump into perishability and the importance of tracking goods across the entire supply chain. And Glenn, you are grilling like a villain back here. And I see we've got some beautiful American cheese that we're going to put on these burgers. Tell me a little bit about, the impact of perishable goods and what that means for supply chain leaders as they're thinking about the summertime, summertime peaks.
Absolutely. You probably don't want your cheese too hot and melted when it shows up at the grocery store. So
probably not.
So, number one is you've got to understand what commodities have temperature requirements. Right. And it's not just temp, it's also humidity, shock, light. There's a number of different sensitivities.
And these Slim Jims?
Slim Jims, absolutely. So they call it the physical attributes of the shipment. That is really important. And so when you think about the world we live in, there's more data than we've ever had before.
Right.
And being able to pull in data from what they call the reefer unit or the refrigerated unit on the back of the truck is key to make sure that the cheese is fresh at our grocery store in those aisles. And so what we do at FourKites is we take all of that information into our platform and we're able to attribute it to a physical shipment, an order, but also the specific temp ranges, right? Cheese can only be shipped at certain levels depending on the type of cheese. Right. So if anything becomes out of tolerance, that's when action needs to ensue.
Right.
Previous days, if you don't necessarily have visibility to it, ultimately it's showing up at the customer. The customer is then finding out the bad news, which is what we don't want to have happen. Right. So the nice thing is with FourKites, you can find out beforehand and you can then decide based on certain thresholds what action you need to take.
Now, you bring up a really good point about temperature tracking, but it's not just temperature, right? It's also other attributes, maybe pressure or altitude that affect shipments.
Absolutely, elevation matters, right? When you think of the Colorado Rockies and where trucks are going through on I-80 especially, that elevation absolutely has an impact on pressurized products, whether it's chips or soda.
Yep.
Or other perishable products that does actually impact the physical attribute of the food. So understanding the physical route is critical through visibility. You see it beforehand, you also see it in real time. You can take action based on what's really going on.
No crumbled chips.
That's
right.
I
love it, absolutely. Now, we think about that, and that technology is available today. But one of the things we've done over the last couple of years is partnered with some incredible companies that are really thinking about not just, current state, but, 2 years down the road, 4 years, 5 years around how, packages and goods will have a lot more information than we ever had today. Companies like Volvo, Qualcomm, Zebra, maybe a little bit about that and how you see that playing out.
Yeah, and when we think about when FourKites was started, it was about where's my truck, where's my container, then it moved to where's my order. We've partnered with leading companies in the world to really change supply chain at a global level. When you look at Zebra is the dominant player for in-4-wall technology, right? So understanding where the goods are in a cold chain, right? So within a cold storage facility, where's that product at physically located? How do I get trucks in and out of my gates as fast as we can? That hardware, that information. If you think of Volvo as an example, what are next generation trucks and that information that driver and that truck is being able to provide back? Right. These are the things that our leading investors are supporting FourKites in every day.
Fantastic. Well, I have to say, the burgers are looking great, although that joke was a little cheesy, so I'm probably going to have to catch up with some of my jokes. All right, let's listen to how Coca-Cola Bottling is transforming their supply chain with visibility from FourKites.
Someone asked earlier, there's a conversation of specifically what was the return on FourKites. Well, that's a difficult question because there's process changes, there's other systems, there's BI. Yes, it's part of the infrastructure and foundational needs to build out a better supply chain. But I think it'd be real challenging to put all of the return on one link of that. I would think that'd be a real hard question to answer. But I think when you go back in time and you're operating your supply chain at a lower cost, as we are, and you're better in stock, as we are, and folks are just in better, more pleasant nature because they're winning, I think those are easy conversations to demonstrate at that point in time because the teams can start to really solve the problems they can actually identify. And then we can actually have better conversations too up the stream with our suppliers. Why aren't the loads showing up on time? Are you even aware? And with that, how do we improve the network? And then how do we start to do continuous moves when your truck comes in? How do we keep that truck moving? And if we can drive productivity, that's just pure value. When a truck doesn't wait as long, the truck keeps moving, that's pure value. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're not doing that at the expense of warehouse labor or inventory. So we want to make sure we're really focusing on the links of the supply chain, just not a link in the supply chain like transportation. So it all comes back to us in terms of being better.
Glenn, a scary stat. 70% of supply chain leaders said that raw materials and getting the right inventory into their production was their single biggest source of risk, their single biggest source of concern and stress. You know, as I enjoy this Coca-Cola product, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how supply chain technology is helping out that situation.
Yeah, that stat, first off, is sad but true, right? When you think of COVID, especially coming out, it's not just a magic, button that people press and all of a sudden you got your Coke product. Right? You've got glass, you've got water, you've got dye, you've got sugar, you got labels, ink, you name it. And the fact is if your upstream suppliers can't get product, whether it's out of China or out of their US plants, you can't make the Coca-Cola and get it to the bottlers and ultimately to your retailer. So that stat you reference is not just for manufacturers, it's also for retailers too that are trying to sell finished every single day.
Now, I mean, that's quite an orchestration. Obviously, rewind 5 years ago, that was probably almost an impossibility. A lot of phone calls, emails, things going back and forth. What are leading companies doing today to help solve that?
Yeah, it really aims around supplier collaboration or customer collaboration. Right. When we surveyed about 100 customers, this was a year ago, when we talked about what does collaboration mean to you, they still listed Microsoft Teams, phone calls, and emails. And the fact is, FourKites every single day is creating collaboration at a transaction level between a supplier, a transport company, and the customer. So you can do that within the application, also within your ERP. It's really changing the way companies are operating. And when you think of FourKites and the 1,200 plus customers, we have millions of shipments every single day and every single year where companies are able to see that ETA regardless of who owns the transport. That is one big shift, is whoever owns the transport, that has changed, right? That end customer understanding where those goods are, that is the #1 priority, and FourKites is able to do that.
Very, very cool. Now, sounds great. Flip it around. Let's say you're the CEO of a company that's doing that. What are the business impacts they're seeing as a result of that collaboration? Because it's great to say, hey, yeah, we collaborate with our suppliers, but the reality is, I got to imagine that impacts the bottom line.
Absolutely. There's really 3 main areas. So first one is workforce efficiency, right? If all of a sudden you've got your new Coca-Cola product or your existing that you're short in a warehouse or a store, you don't necessarily have to call or email where things are at. It's all there. It's natively within your ERP. #2, which is any CRO or head of sales excited to hear, is growth, right? When I collaborate with my suppliers or my customers, we're not focusing on service level issues. We're focused on new product promotions, new launches, and growth and peak, right? Which is summertime 101, right? That's what we want to hear.
We got to be here.
Lastly is really network infrastructure. We see this with a lot of our leading retailers is if I understand where all of my products are coming from, when I invest in new DCs, new stores, I can optimize my network footprint in my facilities. That's a big expense to the bottom line.
Huge, yeah.
And when you're working with thousands of suppliers, knowing where things are and where they come from helps optimize really that end customer experience.
Awesome. Well, a great note, and certainly, hearing about that kind of supplier collaboration really makes me smile. All right, Glenn, I finished my Coca-Cola, and you know what would be strange? If I just, took this thing and took this bottle and threw it out into an open pit. Just kidding, of course. But no, I mean, the reality is, consumers, companies all around the globe are becoming much more conscious of the environment, which is awesome. And supply chain initiatives are now really being guided in many ways, not only by the traditional cost metrics and efficiency metrics, but really sustainability metrics. And we have some great examples of companies who are doing this, but I'd love to hear your take on how sustainability is really shaping the way organizations think about their supply chain, and 2, how technology is really helping them do it.
Absolutely. Sustainability has been around for a long time. Having lived in Europe a decade ago, sustainability was there every single day and impacted a lot of the choices manufacturers made. Now, recently within the US, it's becoming table stakes. Yeah. And sustainability is tough, right? It's something that we all care about, a greener earth, safer products, and understanding where our goods come from. But how do you take action, right? And a retailer has anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 suppliers. So it's hard enough to control what you do, but what about the other 2,000 to 6,000 customers and suppliers that you have? And really there's a few ways I break it down. First one is kind of your scope 3 emissions.
Yep.
And what scope 3 is, it's really the indirect, or the things that aren't necessarily in your purview. So that's your suppliers, it's the transportation companies, it's the drivers. So understanding really just that first baseline. What's my carbon effect within my logistics world? You can absolutely impact that through mode conversions, right? Shifting from LTL to truckload, truckload to intermodal, intermodal to rail, from air to ocean. There are absolutely ways to lower your CO2 footprint every single day in transportation. Another one you can do is look at order fill rate, right? If your customers are constantly ordering at 80%, how do you work with them to improve their planning to be able to order at 100%? That way you're not shipping empty space in those trucks, right? These things do impact. A third one that we've seen a lot, especially as we entered the yard management space and the appointment space over the last couple of years, is driver throughput, right? Every time drivers show up to your facility, the norm today is about 2 hours of free time.
Right.
Well, gosh, if that truck is idling for 2 hours,
think of that. Right.
That's a lot of wasted time and space. So if I can get from 2 hours down to 30 minutes, A, the driver's happier, but B, from a sustainability and a carbon effect, that makes all of our lives a lot safer for the generations to come.
Absolutely, and you know, I'm glad you mentioned the yard example. I mean, one of the things we've seen is that companies that are thinking about visibility, not only for, you know, goods in transit, but all the way through that kind of end-to-end view from the, you know, goods in transit to, you know, the appointment setting all the way to the yard, and having kind of a single pane of glass of that view, that ETA, really makes that whole process more efficient.
Absolutely, and it makes it a lot safer and a lot healthier on the environment side.
A lot
as
greener.
well.
Absolutely. Well, Glenn, we have cooked up some amazing topics here, but I want to talk about one more that's fairly unique, and it has to do with all these brands, because behind these brands are teams of people. And they're working hard every day to make their supply chains better. And it's something unique about FourKites that, you know, we often share with, you know, with companies, is the community around this technology. Maybe a little bit more from your perspective.
Absolutely. People always ask me what separates FourKites from everyone else. And the fact is the community of companies that come together that are all focused on a better supply chain around the world. And these aren't just VPs of supply chain. These are folks from sales and customer service and transportation, you name it. But ultimately, communities help create a purpose for now, but also the future, right? As we think of how we shape the world and how supply chains can be different, this community of companies that we bring together helps elevate all of us, but also creates a better tomorrow too.
Absolutely. In fact, if you lend me your ear, I'll share a few examples that really get me excited when I think about the community at FourKites. One is, you know, the product itself. People can log into our community environment and share ideas, share, you know, best practices. In fact, each year over 200 product ideas come out of the community, and those are voted by peers, shared with our development team. R&D takes those things every single week, goes back and says, hey, we can build this. And it's one of my favorite things. The other thing that's pretty fun is once a month, we have communities that get together more for like a specific topic, and that's either live or actually, you know, through virtual means. And once a year we have this big gathering. In fact, coming up this year in September, Visibility Conference. We're expecting over 1,000 supply chain leaders this year to come together in Chicago for the FourKites Visibility Conference. So lots of great ways that community can really have an impact, not only for that company, but around the world, like you said.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Glenn, we have cooked up an amazing set of topics today, and cooked up some amazing food. So we're ready to dive into that. But before we do, we just want to close out, invite you, if you're interested in learning more about FourKites, check us out. We'd love to share more and help you explore ways that you can improve your supply chain. And as they say in the business, that's the way the cookie crumbles. So Glenn, let's eat.
Sounds good.